due to Governor Baker's executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law that was enacted on March 12th, 2020. Public bodies may carry out their responsibilities while adhering to the public health recommendations regarding social distancing by employing a platform such as Zoom that allows people to participate electronically. And in addition, we can be viewed on television, and all of that information is available on the meeting agenda, which is on the public calendar. So today we have with us Katie Conlon and Arthur Doyle, Michael Zulis, all board members, and I believe that Richard Wells will be joining us a little later. He let Mr. Dennehy, our town administrator, know, and he's also here. Hillary Waite, our executive administrative assistant, and Jennifer McCullough, our licensing agent, are also here with us. And Mike Dennehy, is Kevin Freitag, town council, going to join us later in the meeting?
He will be, yeah, specifically for item number 13.
For item 13, right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And before we begin, I just want to let people know that as far as 652 Canton Avenue, the board is simply discussing whether to seek an extension on the project eligibility application response that we would be giving, just so people know that there'll be an opportunity to address the board on that. This is an interim meeting that has a few timely things that we need to attend to, and hopefully get some additional business done so that our regular business meeting is more manageable. So if people would please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of
the
the United States of America
and
and
to
to
the
the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3, we have a COVID-19 update. And Mr. Dennehy, if you'd like to.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. As you're all aware, the town entered the high-risk community zone, which is the red zone, in last week's weekly report, which looks back the previous 14 days for statistics. It came out Christmas Eve. Milton is one of 188 municipalities in the high-risk category in the state. Subsequently, Health Director Caroline Kinsella and I have been invited by state officials to join a remote meeting next Monday, January 4th, for resources and guidance from the enforcement and intervention team. So it's not a great story for the town. We are all aware that the virus has been in our community. The weekly report that came out just prior to this one, so the report that came out on December 17th, had we had a case or two more, we would have been in the red then. And I think the health department, Board of Health, and our health director have been warning the community about it. We're seeing it in our testing. We had our 5th testing day today, which was held at the high school. In those 5 days of testing, the 4 Sundays in December and the additional one that this board approved last week, over 3,000 tests have been administered, which is a lot, and we're very thankful for that. But one of the numbers that's coming out of that is the high positivity rate. So we're seeing a very similar number to what the state is showing us in our local testing, that approximately 5% or just above 5% are testing positive. So there's still a lot of work left to be done. We continue to reinforce the stop the spread message and mask up Milton and everything we can do. But the virus is in our community, and we are once again one of the high-risk communities in the state.
Thank you. Do any members have questions or comments? No? Okay. So our second item is an approval of the Second Amendment to the agreement between the town of Milton and Fallon Transformative Healthcare related to the COVID-19 testing that Mr. Dennehy was just referring to. It's wonderful that we were able to get this extra testing date. I'm sure the entire board appreciates everybody's efforts to do that, especially right after Christmas.
Madam Chair, if I might, just a couple of more statistics. So again, we've seen over 3,000 tests administered during the 5 testing days. The proficiency and efficiency has grown. It's pretty, the drive-through testing facility at the DPW yard, which is hosted on Sundays for operational reasons. There was some questions why we weren't hosting at the Public Works yard today. Operationally, it wouldn't make sense. We have our Parks and Recreation Consolidated Facilities and DPW operations folks working out of that yard. The traffic would have impeded the productivity of the testing site today. So on a good note, the town was notified today by the state's Division of Administration and Finance that the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund, which has been funding all of these tests that have taken place over the last month or so, that covered period was signed into law. What that means is this changes the deadline. So the deadline was set to expire tomorrow, meaning that all of those funds would have to be used by tomorrow. That has been extended 366 days till December 31st of 2021. As Assistant Superintendent for Business, Amy Dexter had moved on. I have Lisa Kuhl from her accounting team crunching some numbers now to see where the balances are. But I would advocate for and can start a preliminary conversation with Fallon Ambulance, DPW, and Milton Police to try to coordinate a couple of Sundays in January to continue these COVID testing efforts.
Great. Thank you very much. So do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I will move to approve the Second Amendment to the agreement between the town of Milton and Fallon Transformative Healthcare related to COVID-19 testing, and to authorize the town administrator to sign the amendment.
Second.
Thank you.
I have
Ms.
a
Conlon?
question, Madam Chair. I didn't see the Second Amendment, so I don't know whether it's just a matter of adding an amount for today or whether there's some additional language that we should be looking at.
Right. I was just going to ask Mr. Dennehy. I thought it was $50,000. Is that?
Now that it's been extended, the deadline period, and I think we could accommodate a couple of Sundays. A very quick conversation with one of the operations manager at Fallon. They need to get some more materials in and just would like to take a pause potentially for this weekend. And off the top of our cuff, we were talking about potentially January 10th and January 17th, I believe, would be the following 2 Sundays in January. Something to that effect. If you could do another 750 tests per day, that 1,500 tests would bring the total closer to the $400,000, a little north of 350, but not quite $400,000. So, but I'm open to any suggestions. This board doesn't meet again until the 13th, so we could add enough money to get through the testing date on the 10th, if that works operationally for everyone, and then bring it up again on the 13th. But totally up to this board. Currently, the amount of tests that have been administered, roughly, and I crunched some numbers today, it's about $260,000 so far. So if we want to discontinue COVID testing, we still have to authorize another $10,000 for the tests that were administered today. If we want to continue with at least January 10th and revisit it after that, we would have to add some supplemental funding. I hope that makes sense to everyone.
Does that make sense to people? Yeah, Mr. Zulus?
So I think we approved an amendment to the SOW to kick it up to to kick it up to 250 and
Right.
to approve the December 29th testing date. So it seems to me we just need to amend the SOW, again, the statement of work, not the whole contract, just amend the SOW to include the new dates and to increase the amount. So that's on the technical side. On the substantive side, so I think, Kate, to Katie's point, my view is we'd be approving additional testing dates, be they January 10th and January 17th, I think Mike said, and then approving an increased amount. And Mike can give us the amount for those two dates and the overage from today, the extra 10,000. And then so that I think is where we may be procedurally. Substantively, I'm in favor of approving the testing for both the 10th and the 17th. I don't think we need to wait. I think it's important so people know what's going on, so people can plan for it, and so people can have an expectation rather than just approving it 4 days before. I think it's important to approve it up front. So that's my.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Wells?
I concur 100%, especially the fact we're in the red. Testing has never been more critical than it is right now. And the fact that the numbers that we're getting exceeding anything that we even expected. I think when you talk to the contact tracing investigators, one positive test can potentially save a whole family, or a workplace, things like that. So I think it's really vital that I agree with Mr. Zulus. I think we pick the dates now, amend the statement of work, and just be prepared. I don't want to. I'm okay. Found operationally needs to take a pause. I'm okay with that. But once they're ready to go at it, I'm with you, Michael. I think we need to. Testing is the one thing until a vaccine gets here. We can set up vaccination sites. Testing is the one thing right now that we can continue to do to protect our residents.
Any other members? No.
I agree.
Yes.
I think we should continue to focus on the testing. That's the most important thing. I do want to make sure that we have funds for the school request, but I think that's already included in the numbers that Mr. Dennehy provided. So the balance that's available, I would support it going to the testing, especially while we're in the surge.
Right. Okay, I have to say I agree with all of that as well. And even though we might be scheduling a meeting next week, I think I personally would feel better if we just get it on the schedule now. And as Mr. Wells said, I understand if Fallon needs to take a pause on this just for the moment. But so it sounds as if we need. Do we need a friendly amendment then, enshrining the dates and a dollar figure in this motion?
Think so.
Yeah, so I'm happy to offer the friendly amendment for extending the dates to January 10th and January 17th, and authorizing an additional $10,000 for testing that took place on December
Today.
Yeah, December 29th, 2020, and then an additional. Does it come out to 40,000?
Getting to $400,000 would put us in a pretty good space to be comfortable. My suggestion, or
Right.
just some math that I was crunching today, $400,000 would get us through these next two Sunday testing dates.
Okay. So, but you said we were at 260, didn't you?
260, yeah. So an additional 1,500 tests would get us, and that's 750 tests per day would get us to $382,000. So if we threw in a little more wiggle room, understanding that we and other surrounding communities, I looked quickly, but many of our surrounding communities, Quincy, Randolph, that they're also in the red. So again, this and I commend this board for their unanimous and unwavering support to open this up to not just Milton residents, but any residents of surrounding communities.
Okay, so is the proper wording then, because we had set a limit before, is the proper wording then that 400,000? Thank you. Okay, so then strike the additional 10,000 and then just increase the limit from 250,000 to 400,000. Thank you. Good to have lawyers. Do I have an acceptance of the friendly amendment?
Second,
No, who made, I can't remember who made the amendment, who made the motion in the first place?
I-
Arthur, so he accepts it. Okay,
Okay,
great. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
yes,
Mr. Wells,
yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes,
Ms. Collins, yes, that's great. Thank you. A little bit of a load off there. I think our minds. So the next item we have is item 4, approval of transfer of a common Vittler's license from Stella's Restaurant to T&V Milton LLC, doing business as Stella's at 560 Adams Street. And Jennifer McCullough is here if the board has any questions. Has everyone had a chance to read through the application and also read through the conditions? Okay, great. Happy to entertain a motion.
I make a motion,
Madam
Madam
Chair,
Chair. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think this is a public hearing and we have the applicant. I think we should hear from the applicant if the applicant is on the line before we do any motions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna open, that's right, open that first and then we'll, thank you. So I'm looking for I'm looking in the attendees for.
Madam Chair, they can also raise their hand if they're here.
Right, I was hoping that if our applicants could raise a hand, then that would help us identify you and pull you in here to the, there you are, great. Thank you. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. My apologies. I was going to take a motion and then
Yep,
invite
They're
you in.
muted, Madam Chair.
Okay.
It's still
If
muted.
if you would like to unmute and then we can welcome you and say thank you very much for your application and continuing on with Stella's.
Thank you, Madam
If
Chair.
you, I understand that you weren't able to put a presentation together, but if you would like to walk us through your
Yes.
application and also talk a little bit about your business concept, and then the board members could ask questions, we would very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, for hearing us today. My name is Ervin Bimbashi.
And my name is Anton Kuka.
And
We go as, I'm sorry, we go as Tony and my cousin Vinny.
so we are first cousins. And we have had prior to this, we have had a business in Cambridge about 15 years ago. And fun fact, last night my cousin reminded me that in 2006, the Boston Globe wrote down that our we had like a sub shop, kind of like a gourmet sub shop, was one of the top 20. We got number 3, top 20 under $20 to eat in the city of Boston. So it was pretty good. I didn't remember that, but he reminded me last night. It was in the Boston Globe about 14 years ago. So we like to bring the same opportunity to the town of Milton and a new adventure.
Lovely, thank you. I realize that you're still working on the menu a little bit with Laura Delakai, but maybe you would like to give us some idea about
Yeah.
your Stellas as opposed to the Stellas we have at the moment.
Yes, as I was talking with Laura yesterday, I said to her that we're gonna put a new hash, like a homemade hash, because right now it's canned and I don't like that. So we're gonna try to put a new hash made from scratch. We're gonna try to put a French mix made from scratch, and not like just a cinnamon bread and a scrambled egg, because that doesn't really count like a French mix to me. We're gonna put a waffle, and we're gonna try to get everything that is good and keep it the same, and whatever is not working for him, we're gonna try to make it better. That's our goal. We're gonna try to put a credit card machine because he doesn't have credit card. It's only cash business. And maybe in the future, we planning to apply for a liquor license, if it's possible, with the town of Milton, and get some extended hours, maybe to 9 or 10 o'clock for dinner menu for the weekends.
Right, and I understand you'd apply to the zoning board of appeals for extending hours under that permit, from what I understand.
Not yet.
Not yet. As for now,
Right. But that would be the procedure.
procedure, yes.
Right, right. Okay, great, thank you. Do any members have questions before we see if residents have? Okay, Mr. Zulus?
Just a couple of questions about the application and the proposed conditions.
Mhm.
This may have to do with the zoning board of appeals, but the application sought proposed hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., whereas the proposed conditions are, I think, current, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Friday, and then Saturday, 5 p.m. closing, and Sunday, 3 p.m. closing. The application has 10 p.m. And also the proposed conditions has a maximum seating capacity of 62, whereas the application has 70. So, so I guess the question is, what's the, are we acting on the proposed conditions that we have in front of us? Or are we acting on the request of the new owners? And I assume just before, gentlemen, the deal has closed, has it not? I saw the asset purchase agreement, but the deal has closed?
The deal will be closed. Purchase and sale agreement was done, but the deal will be closed tomorrow.
It hasn't closed. Okay,
And,
deal hasn't closed. You haven't paid the money yet, haven't got the bill of sale.
We have given a small portion, about a 10% down payment,
Okay,
and the rest, an extra 40% will be paid tomorrow, and the rest is financed.
okay,
Right.
okay. So I guess the question is really for us on the conditions, what what we have before us as proposed conditions is different from what's in your application. So that's
Yes.
my question.
That
As the hours go, we are told by the owners that those are the hours on their permit, the hours of operation. So we didn't want to change anything. We wanted to leave it as they had it. But when we found out that those were not the hours on the actual permit, so that's why we're going with whatever it's on the permit and then apply for extending hours.
I see.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Just I can just also add to that, and then I'll call on you, Mr. Wells. Jennifer had done an exhaustive search of the files, and the only permit that was turned up had what you see on the proposed conditions, and she has, as you can tell from Mr. Kuka's answer, that they had that conversation, so they were prepared for these conditions. Yes, Mr. Wells.
So Madam Chair, maybe a little bit of history here. So I believe this is the third oldest business operating in the square. I think the only two that might have seniority to it would be Gronewood Christie and the Eastmont Liquor Store. From a precedent operational point of view, for many years, Stella's was owned by the Maharis family. And during that time, it was open at least Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights till 10. They were very popular on their Greek dishes, and Friday night especially was fried fish night. And as I alluded to Jen, for a number of years, when it was owned by the Carroll family, it actually had late night hours that began at 11 and went till 4 in the morning. And that was on Fridays and Saturdays only, and that existed for a number of years back in the 90s. So I just did that for Michael, just to let him know. I'm basing it on the application, but just from a historical point of view, it was open in the evenings. Never had a liquor license that I recall, but it was open in the evenings for a number of
That's
years.
good to know.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, Ms. Conlon?
I have a question for the applicant. It sounds as though there's not going to be any planned renovations to the interior. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So the seating, all of that, the kitchen equipment, all of that will remain as is.
As it is, yes.
Thank you.
And just to note, I think the board knows this, but just to note, for the public, that fire and police have signed off, and the health department is still working with them on finalizing a few things, but they anticipate that's just a finalizing and there's not a substantial issue or anything like that.
Correct.
Madam Chair, would we have to close the hearing before we accept the
Yes,
motion?
but I think we should probably see if there are people to speak to this particular application first.
I'm fine with
And
that.
then, no, that's good. No, it's always good to make sure that I have the procedure down, and I apologize for the glare on my face. Not used to the change of seasons here, apparently. So let me see.
If you're sitting there in the complete dark 2 hours from now, I think you're gonna be alone.
If there are members of the public who would like to speak to the application to transfer the common vittler's license from Stella's Restaurant to T&V Milton LLC, doing business as Stella's Restaurant, we'd be happy to hear from you. So if you would either go down to the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, or if you're using your phone, you can press *9 and that will raise your hand. So I'm just going to give that a moment because sometimes it can be more difficult on the phone to find that. Although it looks as if we do have only one person on the phone, or two. Okay, I don't see anyone. Very good. Okay. So do I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Thank you very much. And I will entertain a motion then.
So I'd make a motion, Madam Chair, to transfer the common victual license from Stella's Restaurant to T&V Milton LLC, DBA Stella's at 560 Adams Street in East Milton Square.
Second.
Right.
Pending final inspection
Great.
from the Board of Health. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Right, pending final inspection from the Board of Health. Mr. Zulus, did you have something else to say, or was that you just wanted to make sure we got the whole motion?
No, just a question. I didn't see in the documents, maybe I missed it, a reference to the lease. Gentlemen, did you get a lease assigned to you, or do you have a lease with the landlord?
Yes,
So was it assigned to you, and for how many years do you have the lease?
so it's 10 and a half years.
I'm sorry?
10 and a half years left.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought I saw that. Okay. And I got a second. Oh, Ms. Conlon?
Yes. Madam, I think we should add as a friendly amendment also to the motion, subject to the conditions for the common vic license as presented at the meeting.
Our meeting, this meeting.
Right.
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Agreed.
Just trying to capture that. So when we have minutes, I have it in there. Okay, great. Thank you. And I had a second. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Congratulations and thank you very much, gentlemen. I wish you a wonderful
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
and a wonderful new year.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. Oh, wait, when are you opening?
January 2nd, we're starting.
Very important. Okay, I'm glad I thought to ask. January 2nd. Okay, we know to come in.
Oh, yes,
Great.
definitely. Please do.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
Yeah.
Sunday morning.
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
Yes.
Great. Okay, lovely. Well, good luck. Take
Thank
care.
you very much. Thank you. Happy
Good
New
luck.
Year.
Thank you. Here we are. Okay, so really 5 and 6 can be taken together. This is a discussion really about extending, asking for an extension of the deadline for mass housing regarding the project eligibility letter application for the proposed project at 652 Canton Avenue. And I will say that there are people who are interested in speaking to this. We've already heard from them, and I was reminded today that the ZBA is going to be picking up its hearings, although I believe there's one tonight. But really that following week, the week that we have our meeting on the 13th. And I was wondering if we might be able to have a shorter sort of evening meeting, 5:45, 6 o'clock, something like that, unless there's really a spot next week, to have people come in and respond to the PL application for 652 Canton Avenue, because the same neighborhood will be attending the hearings for the property directly in front. And so for them to make both meetings could be a little difficult. So I'm not sure if members would be able to do that, or I think just to help people attend and make sure that they're heard for our comments for 652. And then the second part of this is, or the main part of this, I should say, is extending that, if the board agrees to extend the deadline, to see if we could get another 45, or I think, as Katie had mentioned, even 60 days. If we look at what's going on with staff right now, they're very challenged. I think Mr. Dennehy could probably speak to that best. But they really, they need the extra time, and it's not just the planning department, but if you look at this PL application, and along with all the other applications that we've been reading through, they've got their hands full engineering and even our public safety, everybody. So thoughts from the members? Yes, Mr. Zulus.
So I'm happy to meet, and I actually think I was going to propose that we meet next week for the following purpose. I think that this application represents a substantial change to the project at 648 Canton Ave, and I think what we need to do, I'm not sure the exact procedure, but I think what we need to consider is sending a letter both to Mass Housing and to our Board of Appeals to let them know, if we agree, if this board agrees that this is a substantial change at 648, that both the Board of Appeals and Mass Housing should know that that's the viewpoint of this board. In order to do that, before the Board of Appeals meeting on January 12th, that would require us to meet next week to approve a letter or a statement both to our Board of Appeals and to Mass Housing that this proposed project is 652 really intersects with the existing
Absolutely.
project 648, and it represents that kind of change. So my thought is we consider a statement to that effect, and doing that next week so that the Board of Appeals has it in advance of their hearing on 648 at 648 Canton Ave on January 12th.
Okay, well, we've been trying to get some guidance on that exactly what you're talking about, the substantial alteration, or I can't remember the exact phrase. And I think that probably we should get a memo from Judy Barrett on that, because it's not clear. I mean, clearly, given what's in the PL application, we have some things to say about the project and how it intersects. But there's a way that we can do that for this project, or this part of the process. And then part of that also belongs in the ZBA sort of venue. So I think that having it next week is good, because we can get that guidance, and we can also hear neighbors, before the hearings the following week, and get something out sooner. But in the meantime, I think it's prudent to just at least ask for that extension because as Tim Zerwinski said, 2 weeks have been eaten up by the holidays for staff. But Ms. Conlon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's an important issue, but we want to get the technical guidance both to our board and the Board of Appeals, because I think there are some lines here that we have to be very careful about. So I think we want to get the technical guidance on that point. If we were to seek a 45 or 60-day extension, I think it's less critical that the meeting be next week. I'm not opposed to meeting next week, but I think we'll know in fairly short order if we get the extension, which means that we have some additional time to hear the public comments, because we're going to want to have the planning staff available to be at the meeting to hear the public comments for purposes of drafting the letter, but we're also going to want the town comments to drive the process as well. So given vacation schedules, the holidays, we have 2 holidays in January, we could have weather events, and we have a planning staff that's already dealing with an awful lot on their plate, including a lot of 40B applications, either now pending before the Board of Appeals or at the PEL stage. I think we should seek a 60-day extension. I'm not as concerned about meeting next week versus at a later date, if it makes sense for the staff and for the department heads who are also going to be weighing in, especially if we get the extension, which again, I think we'll know in short order, but we need the technical guidance on what our role is versus what the Board of Appeals' role is. Board of Appeals has technical assistance, and I believe this issue has been raised. So a lot of people are aware of it, but that would be my sense. I'm not opposed to meeting next week. I just really want us to get the guidance before we do that and see if we can get the extension and get a timely response from Mass Housing. So we know what we're looking at in terms of timing.
Mr. Wells?
My thoughts are a little, as I wrote to you yesterday, my thoughts are a little bit stronger on this. I think intersects isn't even, I think it's more they're attempting to super glue the 2 projects together and make it one. One of the things that truly concerns me is that, the one thing is, the neighbors, we went through this whole process. The neighbors thought it was 648. And at the last minute, just before the ZBA comes on board, and even though Katie's right, whether we get 60, it's out there. Any further interaction, either from this board or that board on this project, we know that the ultimate goal of the developer is to do 648 and 652, wants to do them both. So, and I said to you, and I don't have the legal expertise in this, but it's to me, it seems like the residents are being fouled here, that you're being presented with one at the last minute, another. My 2 concerns are I think as it's being presented right now, I think they need to go back and start all over again. And Mass Housing has to recognize this is not the norm for a proposal. Or B, we need our own expertise. And as I said to you, and I brought this up at the last minute, whether it's someone like Joanna, someone like that who is going to help guide us through this legally to deal with this one project. I mean, this is unlike any of the other, and I've been around since the Muse, Randolph Ave, all of them. This is different. We went through a whole process here at 648, and at the last minute, which was, Mr. Denny, you can correct me, I think it was last week, it dropped on your desk that they're adding this to it. I think we really need to do our best here for the residents to try and Katie and Michael, I'll meet whenever you want. I'm fine with that sooner or later, but my bigger concern is that they just changed pitches and they brought in a knuckleball when you were expecting, all fastballs. It's just, I'm very concerned for us and I'm very concerned for the residents.
Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, thank you. In considering the general topography of the area, it might be worth asking the town's conservation agent to determine as to whether or not any wetland delineations need to be made at 652.
I see Mr. Zawinski's on the call, so I'm
Right.
sure he's nodding on this already.
Mr. Zawinski, hello. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you out there who don't know, he is our planning director. Would you, I don't know if you heard everything that we were talking about, or if you'd like me to recap anything, but we'd be grateful to hear from you.
No, I've been here for the beginning. I wanted to see what Stella's was all about. So I've heard the whole conversation, and I think one way or the other, and I've been kind of privy to some of the advice that Judy has given to some members via email. I think it is appropriate to ask Mass Housing for some type of, not just the extension of the comment period, which I think has been a common practice. We got an extension for the last ones just to sort of, accommodate, remote meetings and things like that. But it's very difficult to analyze a project like this, not knowing what the approved project at 648, if it's going to be an approved project, is going to be. So it's there's a lot of, I agree with Mr. Wells. This is kind of not usual. None of these are usual, but this is just kind of really presenting a lot of issues. And I think, it would be appropriate for Mass Housing to step in some way, I think, to, give us the opportunity to actually look at these things in the context that they're going to exist, as opposed to, on pieces of paper that we've gotten. So.
Mr. Zulus?
So I appreciate all that, and I agree with Katie on the extension. However, I think this is a cynical attempt to circumvent the process. And I think the Board of Appeals, before January 12th, if this board believes that, if this board agrees, I think we should communicate that to the Board of Appeals and to Mass Housing prior to January 12th. And so that's why I suggested we should do something next week, just because of that January 12th date. It's fine to get expertise. It's fine. We need to go through the process of getting the expertise and getting the legal advice. But it's very clear that this is a substantial change to 648. It's very clear.
You're right.
Anyone looks
You're
at
right.
it. So we can get the expertise, but I think it's important for us to move on this before the January 12th Board of Appeals date, because I think they want to know what this board thinks about it.
Right, thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think we all are in agreement that this is a substantial change, and this is a really egregious project, both of them, 648 and 652. There's a lot of issues presented by both, and certainly by them together. I think the filing with Mass Housing on 652 is public knowledge. I believe the Board of Appeals is aware of that, and they have some technical expertise. And I want to be sure that us weighing in on this is what we should be doing. And I think that they're aware of the issues and may at their hearing, presumably would be asking questions about this proposal and possibly taking it up themselves. So I'm not opposed to meeting next week, but I want to be sure there are lines here that we have to be very careful about. We are dealing with the PEL stage. The Board of Appeals is going to open a hearing on a matter, and it's going to be within their jurisdiction too, to decide how they're going to handle it. So we just need to be careful that we're observing the lines here. And I think that's just important to note.
Right. And I think we can do all of these things. I understand. I don't want to create a difficulty because of some technical, for lack of a better word, impropriety or transgression that we make to cause a problem for the ZBA. And I know no one does. At the same time, I think that I think that it is a good idea to meet next week if everybody can make it. And in looking at posting dates, I took a look at, thank you, Hillary, for supplying this last week before Christmas for us. But we could meet on the 5th or the 6th at this point, looking at posting. And we could add a few other things to this agenda in order to shorten the next agenda, or if there's enough time, we could actually just move our meeting. Mr. Dennehy, I think that actually, is the Ice House scheduled for every evening next week or just one evening? Just because I'm just wondering if we if we can, if we need to have a meeting at, say, 6 PM, or if we can meet at 7, and I don't know what members are available for. And I don't know if all of our other business will be tied up by that date either.
I can check with Beverly Sutton. But the only thing I see on the calendar now is January 6th and January 12th.
Okay, so, so the 6th, so the 5th, it looks like we could meet that date. Our other business probably needs to wait to the 13th. That's not really enough time maybe to conclude.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Wells.
I just want to ask, my question is for Mike Zulus. Mike, can you just follow up? Because I can tell you're animated here. You're far more animated at 2 than you are at 8. Yeah, but what are you proposing that we write to them, like, forthwith?
I need to think about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
but
Okay.
the essence of it would be, if our view is that this represents a substantial change to 648, that 648 needs to go back to Mass Housing. They need
I
to
agree.
weigh this project in total.
Well,
And that the Board of Appeals, pardon me just for a minute, and that the
Yeah.
Board of Appeals can, if it's our view, and we need to think about it, but it may be best for the Board of Appeals to postpone their process, if that's the case. So I think we just need to make sure it's fine to assume everybody knows what's going on here. But I think it's important, if this board has a view, and I certainly have a view, but if this board has a view, that it should make that view known prior to the 12th.
I agree.
Well, and I think that's where the guidance comes in, because we may not be able to step into the ZBA's role and tell them what to be doing, but there are certain things that we absolutely should be saying and can say to Mass Housing. So I think that we can get that guidance and say substantially what we mean.
And there's certainly no prohibition on this board telling the ZBA what it thinks. We're not stepping into the role if we just tell them what our opinion is.
Ms. Conlon?
I think in terms of the timing, I'm pretty sure that the ZBA scheduled several meetings for next week, so they may not be posted yet, but I think we need to double check that, because we have one Zoom platform, and a lot of dates were figured out for those ZBA meetings and when the other boards are going to be meeting. So we just need to be sure we have the capacity to hold 2 Zoom meetings on the same night or at different times on the same night. So I
Right.
think we need to pin that down.
Would members be able to meet at, say, 5:45 or 6 if we just had a couple of agenda items, this being one, and then maybe a couple of other things?
Madam Chair, on this issue, if you want to post this for New Year's Eve, I'm in. The sooner the
Okay,
better
well,
with me.
I also think it's important for it to be accessible for residents too. So that's my other feeling about having it sort of at an hour where people could make it. I know it's remote, but people are still working. So thank you, though. I do appreciate that, Mr. Wells. So if everybody could, Mike Dennehy, could we email our availability to you and then maybe coordinate with Beverly to make sure that we're not stepping in? Okay, because I think the ZBA may have a couple of other things coming too. Oh, you're muted.
I just sent an email to Beverly and Chair Leonard about the availability of the 5th if possible, knowing
Okay.
that the 6th is already taken up. And Hillary's informed me they planned on, Vice Chair Conlon's, they planned on using the 5th, 6th, and 7th, but let me confirm with them about the 5th.
Right, yeah, I have it penciled in, but great. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate the discussion and the availability. I know 4 weeks in a row is a bit difficult.
We used to meet
excuse me, I have to
we
ask,
were meeting
are
2 days in a week.
Are we targeting the 5th or the 6th or both at this point, depending on the availability at 5:30 or 6?
I would say that it would be good to shoot for either, because we'd have to post tomorrow to get the 5th. So I think if members could respond to both of those, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay. So in the meantime, though, I think we should still vote to ask for that extension. Mike Busby had offered that, or not, he'd offered that in the last go round, but he did say to contact him with any requests or thoughts. So, so we could
I'll make a
authorize.
motion, Madam Chair, to authorize town council to request an extension of the comment deadline to Mass Housing related to the project eligibility letter application for the proposed project at 650 Trippecare Avenue.
Thank you. very much.
I'll offer a friendly amendment that we make it the request 60 days.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, great.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Well, actually, before we do that, Mr. Freitag, I see you're on the line. Is there anything that you would like us to consider or add before we vote on this? No?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, oh, you're not on screen, Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, and Mr. Doyle.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And let's see. Item number 7. So at this point, we're looking at opening the warrant. And our warrant closing date is actually, we set it at the 13th. I don't think it needs to stay there or that it will stay there. But I don't know that we need to change it at the moment. But if someone would like to make a motion to open the warrant for the annual town meeting.
I'll move to open the warrant for the 2021 annual town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells. Oh, you're muted. Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Mr. Wells, you're muted. I'm going to note for the record that Mr. Wells is not on screen and he's muted. I think he may have stepped away. So we'll just leave him as an abstain at this moment. And I think as the board has noted, just for people who didn't see our last discussion about this, we're going to be keeping close attention on our state legislature in January to see how the FY 22 state budget is shaping up, or at least the process, because I don't believe they've even published a calendar. At least the last time I looked for it, there was no calendar. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if town meeting needs to move forward. And would members like to discuss any articles for submission at this time, or should we put that off? Ms. Conlon?
I think we should discuss submitting the article to correct the technical error in the town administrator special legislation that creates confusion over the hiring of employees. There's a comma that, unfortunately, there's a comma that the state legislature added 4 years ago, which changed the meaning of the provision. So we need to fix that. And so it doesn't have to be at the annual meeting, but we should fix that at some point. So I think that's one that we could submit for this meeting in May, assuming that it goes forward in May.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other articles members wish to? No? Okay, great. Thank you. So our next item is item 8. I received official word from April Anderson, Chair of the Planning Board, that the Planning Board wishes to remove all of its articles from the February 22nd, 2021 town meeting warrant. Thank you.
I'll move to remove the following 3 articles originally submitted by the planning board from the warrant for the February 22nd, 2021 special town meeting: the condominium conversion bylaw, the access dwelling unit bylaw, and the earth removal tree protection bylaw.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying, Madam Chair. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, excellent. Okay, moving right along. Oh, good. The next is the local rapid recovery planning application, and Mr. Zerwinski is here to walk us through the application.
Thank you, Chair Collins. So I think everyone should have a copy of the application that my office submitted to the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative, which is an office within the Department of Housing and Community Development. They do traditionally grant funding rounds on an annual basis to do economic development planning in all of the downtown districts and all the municipalities in the Commonwealth. Things like design guidelines for business districts. They do parking plans. They do market analysis studies, things like that. This is a special grant funding round specifically about COVID recovery in business districts. And it's really meant to be, really quickly get that money out the door and get help to towns that need it. So it's $9.5 million that MDI, the Mass Downtown Initiative, is putting up. It's a non-competitive grant, so if you send in an application, you're going to get something, which I thought was very attractive. And basically, what the way it's going to be structured is, once they get all the applications and kind of see what towns are looking for in terms of help from economic development planning professionals, they'll figure out kind of what the scope is and kind of what how to divvy up those funds. So it's a little bit of a kind of wait and see in terms of what type of assistance we're going to get. But the things that they're targeting are kind of, short-term and long-term priorities for recovery in your business districts. So I submitted an application for both East Milton and the Milton Village Central Ave Business District. And you can see in the application some of the things that were targeted. And this is based on, my own observations. And I had a few discussions with the chamber, just kind of about what they felt some of the needs were for businesses. And I tried to keep it, quite frankly, as open-ended as possible, just because we haven't done a ton of economic development planning in my time or in my experience in town. That hasn't really been, something that's quite in my wheelhouse. So, I wanted to use the opportunity to bring in some professionals that could at least get the ball rolling on us thinking about, what are our businesses' needs, coming out of the pandemic. And so things like, and I'm kind of looking off screen, so I apologize. Things like facilities for outdoor activities for businesses, technical assistance to help businesses set up online storefronts, marketing campaigns for the business district. And then in the long term, thinking about changes to regulations pertaining to licensing, outdoor merchandising, outdoor dining, exploring the potential for district management entities like a business improvement district, things like that are, not necessarily specific to any one given business, but really sort of look at all of the businesses as a whole. This is for technical assistance. It's not really for implementation of anything. So it really is kind of the first step in, okay, let's, diagnose what the needs are. And then we can start to think about, okay, are there other funding opportunities to potentially implement some of these strategies? I thought it was a good opportunity to sort of start thinking about, we think about the sort of the physical environment a lot in planning, but there are other components to planning. And I think, getting the opportunity to get some professional help in, I thought was a good opportunity. So that application was submitted, I think it was maybe a week and a half ago on the 18th. But I think the vote that's in front of you right now is just to authorize someone, whether it's Mike or Melinda or Chair Collins, excuse me, to just sign the application so that it's kind of official. Or if you want me to pull it back, I'm happy to do that. But I figure it's free money and could be helpful to the business district. So I felt confident kind of moving forward with that. So that's my.
Great, thank you. Do members have questions or comments for Mr. Zawinski?
I think it's worthy to explore this grant application. I think
Great.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion to approve, authorize the town administrator to sign the local rapid recovery planning application as drafted.
Second.
Second.
Yes, I just want to say in my recent and some not so recent discussions with the chamber, these are some of the kinds of more qualitative things that I feel that they've been wanting to explore. And so I think this is a pretty exciting opportunity, and having done some of the technical work then maybe puts us in a better spot to get grants to actually do the implementation. So thank you.
That's actually what the Mass Downtown Initiative folks said, because I've actually been looking at some of their other funding for some other things. And I was concerned, if we send in this application, then we get knocked down to the bottom of the list for everything else? And they're like, no, the opposite. It really should put you in good shape for some future opportunities.
Right. Yes. Well, I know that the housing committee faced that dynamic that because we hadn't done technical work yet, when we applied for other grants that would have moved us forward, we weren't able to get them. So thank you. Now we have the technical work done, but all those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes, and thank you for the good work, Tim.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Absolutely.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Swansky.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Next is a pilot payment from Milton Academy. Do I have a motion to accept?
Madam Chair, move to accept payment in lieu of taxes from Milton Academy in the amount of $162,500.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Zulus?
Can I ask you a question? In the letter that apparently accompanied the check,
Yes.
the CFO and COO of Milton Academy referred to the fact that the Board of Trustees of Milton Academy have earmarked $160,000 for road improvements at the intersection of Vosges Lane and Center Street to address pedestrian concerns. And it goes on to state that the project has been discussed with the town and advocated for by the neighbors. I just want to ask Mr. Dennehy, is that something that we have been working in concert with Milton Academy on? And is that your understanding that we're working jointly on that effort?
To some extent, this was a project that they reached out about. They hired the engineers, Howard Stein Hudson. I'd have to go back in my records. I know DPW Director Berkeley has been aware of this. I'm not sure if it's as coordinated as that might sound, but let me do some homework on it with DPW Director. I know this is the stretch of Vosges Hill that runs from Canton back up to Center. It's not the entire length of Vosges Hill, and there are some properties there that they had sought some improvements. Those of you familiar with that intersection, there's a steep grade as you come off of Center down to Vosges Hill as it takes you down to Canton Avenue. So I know there's a lot of pedestrian access there, so I'm not sure exactly what the $160,000 is going to do, but I can certainly get back to you after speaking with Director Berkeley.
Yeah, we just want to make sure our DPW weighs in on it, seems to me, and gets make sure it's what we want.
Yeah, again, I'll have to take a look at it, but I believe this was something that Milton Academy initiated.
Mr. Wells?
Mike Denny, what was it, if my memory's correct? It's like in 2015, 2016, Glover got the first
Walk to school.
walk to school, yeah. And I thought the intersection of Vosges Hill, Canton played into that, if I remember correctly.
It may have, it predates me with the town, but I can certainly take a look at that whole
Yeah,
that whole area. That's my understanding. This Vosges Hill project would stop at Canton and not continue down onto Brook Road, that smaller piece of Vosges Hill.
yeah, I think that part's already done. I'm 99% sure that's where it extended from Moses and Canton, then down across Canton and Brook to Glover School. And just, that was the first one we were received.
Yeah, I will take that letter that came with the pilot and forward that to Chase Berkeley and get his take on it. But
I agree
Thank
with
you.
Mike Zulus. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, Ms.
Madam
Conlon?
Chair, so the motion was to approve the pilot payment for 162.5. There are some additional gifts that the Milton Academy is
Right.
making, so the total gift is 192.
Right.
No, it's on our agenda, I think, just as a pilot payment. I guess technically it's all pilot, but I'm wondering whether we need to add it to a separate agenda to accept the other gifts or whether it's not necessary. I think we've had some different advice that we may not need to accept other gifts. And Town council could clarify that for us. That at least used to be the tradition.
Okay, you're saying the tradition was to accept those other gifts, even though it wasn't strictly legally necessary. Is that correct?
Well, gifts in general, yes. So I'm wondering whether for the 10,000 to each of the police and fire departments, the gift of 7,500 to the teen center and 2,000 to the library, whether we need a separate vote to accept those either on this agenda or at a future agenda. It's just a question.
Okay, Mr. Freitag?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag, Town Council. Under the law, the select board actually does not need to vote to accept monetary gifts. Gifts of personal property, the select board does need to accept. So gifts that are being made to departments would be directed to those departments and then in turn relayed to and accounted for by the treasurer. So to Vice Chair Collins' point in question, you would not need a second, or you would not need to add anything to today's agenda or to any future agenda to accept those monetary gifts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's hope so. But I think it's a good idea to acknowledge them because if they're just coming into departments, the general public wouldn't understand that those are being made. And that happens with other groups too, such as the hospital. So did we get a second on that motion?
Yes, I believe so.
Thank you. All those in favor?
actually,
Yes, Mr. Zulus?
Just before we vote, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is an increase. It is welcome. However, it is less than half than the amount that would be called for, that is called for under our pilot policy, the town's pilot policy. So while we appreciate it, it is a substantial amount, particularly in this environment. It is still less than half than the approximately 400,000, I think, that would be required as a bare minimum under our pilot policy.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you very much. And next, actually, we don't have a payment yet from Milton Housing Authority, so that's that would be deferred until we do receive a check. So we skip 11 and we go right to 12, which is the Budget and Financial Advisory Committee. So I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, to appoint Leroy Walker as chair and Steve McCurdy as a member of the Budget and Financial Advisory Committee.
Second.
So all those in favor? Yes.
Ms.
Ms.
Collins, Ms. Collins, yeah, I'm going to vote in favor of this. I just, given that there are two people, I'm willing to have the board appoint the chair. That's not the normal process. However, normally a committee appoints its own chair. So I know that the Equity and Justice Committee, we appointed the chair, and we're doing it now a second time in recent times. But going forward, I'm hoping we're going to stick to the tradition of allowing committees that we appoint to select chairs. Where we only have two members here, and I know Mr. Walker has been very involved in the suggestion of this committee, I'm willing to vote for it today in this form.
Was that a condition of his appointment, Mr. Denny? Was he? Was that? I hear you, Katie, on that. You bring up a good point.
All right. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. And item 13. So this is the Department of Public Utilities docket number 20-120 that has to do with increasing rates by Boston Gas doing business as National Grid. And to help us navigate this, we have Town Council, Kevin Freitag.
Yes, good afternoon again, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag for Town Council. I'll keep this quite brief. At your last meeting, the Select Board voted not to file a motion to intervene to the evidentiary hearing of this hearing at the DPU. I'm in the process of writing a letter to the DPU today just to thank them for giving us an opportunity to file that motion and acknowledging that we will not, in fact, be doing so. And then also, I plan today to reach out to the Assistant Attorney General who's been assigned to this matter to just sort of extend the thoughts that the board had at its last meeting as voiced by Member Zulus regarding the town's interest in certainly playing whatever active role it could in assisting the Attorney General's office in this case. And then I'll also continue to update the board as the case progresses at the DPU. The doc gets online, so I'll continue to review that and provide updates to the board, as well as giving some additional information to the board about not only the board's ability, but also the public's ability to participate in a public hearing.
So, Mr. Freitag, while I know we outlined some of the dates last time, and I just want to, I think it's the 26th and the 28th of January that there's a public hearing. And I don't know whether you can answer this or maybe Ms. Conlon can, because she's our longest serving member, but is this the type of thing that our board might gather feedback from the public and then present that on their behalf?
I can just speak to the opportunity to do so, not the history of the town having done so, but regarding the opportunity to do so, the notice that we got from the DPU provided information regarding 2 public hearing dates, which you've just mentioned, as well as the ability for public written comment. And when I had spoken with some of the parties involved, they had indicated that other municipalities would likely take that route, that they would submit written comments. So that's certainly something that the board could do, and I would submit on the board's behalf.
And what kind of a timeline should you be on to do that, so that we're not asking you to do this at the last moment?
Well, I think that the deadlines, I have to pull it up here. I believe that they were towards the end of January. So it might make sense for the board to have something on its next agenda, or also designate one of the members to sort of coordinate with me what the town's response might be, so that I can start preparing that with an eye towards having it ready for your next meeting and then submit it before the deadline.
Right, I see there's a procedural hearing on the 7th, and then if we want to provide comments, we have to let them know via email on January 22nd.
Right.
And then written comments are all the way up to January 29th. So,
right.
So is there a member who feels that they would be able to assist Mr. Freitag, or would like to, and/or? I don't know that I would be qualified. So I'm certainly picking my way through that very thick electronic document. But Mr. Zulus, you look as if you're going to say something.
So when do we need to provide something? I'm sorry, by what date are we going to provide something?
We'd have to let them know by the 22nd that we wanted to provide something, and then the hearings would be January 26th and January 28th, and any written comments submitted would be submitted by the 29th.
All right, so So we have some time. Look, look, I mean, if no one else, I'm happy to connect with Kevin on this, unless someone else wants to jump in, but I'm happy to connect with him on this.
Okay.
I'd be happy to
Unless
have you
someone
do it,
else
Mr. Zulus. I'm not,
What's that?
I'd be happy to have you do it. I'm actually, as I said at the last meeting, I'm actually comfortable with just letting the AG take this and run with it and not even getting involved in it. But to the extent we want to solicit public comments, should we put this on an agenda as well for January 5th, if we're going to meet on January 5th? Just in case there's a resident who would like to make a comment. There may not be any, but giving people an opportunity.
Right. I think I would feel more comfortable doing that. No, people may not want to comment, but I would hate to pass up an opportunity for them. So I do like the idea of putting it on the 5th or the 6th. Mr. Wells?
So to kill two birds with one stone here, Madam Chair, perhaps to Mr. Zulus's point and to Katie's point, let's put it on. Let's see if we get any input from citizens. And if we don't, perhaps to Katie's point, let's just let the AG continue forward on this. And if they need some input from us, I mean, we all have enough work on our plates. It saves us all something. And I'm sure town council, if he feels that we need something, we can do it.
Right.
I think that might really help. 100 people show up on the 5th, that maybe we should, to Mrs. Zulus's point, pen to paper sooner versus later. If not, then, I mean, I think the fact just the AG putting so much at this so fast shows their seriousness and their commitment to this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I agree.
Right. $550,000 is
Right.
a lot of resources.
And
So,
that's,
Mr. Zulus?
yeah, that's all true. It's just, and I think we all agree it's important for our residents to have a voice in this because the rates are going to go up a very substantial amount.
Right.
And so our residents need a voice on this. I think we all agree. So to the extent that it's our duty and desire to provide that voice, we can do that.
Thank you. Okay. I think that's a good roadmap. Okay. So let me just want to make sure that it makes it onto the agenda. So there we go. And thank you very much, Mr. Freitag.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
So under confirming future meeting dates, we're looking at the 5th or 6th, sometime around 5:45 or 6 o'clock. And then also on the 13th, and then the 27th. Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, thank you. Beverly Sutton from the Zoning Board of Appeals replied that they will not need to access Zoom on January 5th.
Oh, okay. Then we have our date. Thank you. So just for,
Do we want to then meet at 7 or do you still want to meet at 5:30 or 5:45 if it's a regular, if we can use the Zoom during the night?
right. That was my next question. I think 7 is better for at least some of us. Yes. Right. Okay.
And I think for the public as well.
Right. So let's do that. Great. Thank you. Future agenda items. I think we've been collecting those, but in case we've missed one, does someone have something they'd like to add to the agenda?
I have one I'm going to send you, Madam Chair, but it doesn't have to be, it can be in February. It doesn't have to be.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Very good. Now we're on to our last agenda item. And I move, oh yes, Mr. Freitag? Yes.
I was gonna say goodbye.
Yes,
I won't be
goodbye.
joining you in executive
And
session.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all as well.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Kevin.
Okay, there we go. I move to enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection A, Subsection 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, namely parcels abutting 432 Adams Street, as I believe that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of this public body, the Select Board. May I have a second?
Second,
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes.